Good stuff. Well, good morning. It's nice to see everybody on this snowy first day out of lockdown. I'm Paul Markle, Executive Director of the Barrie Chamber, and I'd like to thank you all for joining the Chamber today for this session on bridging generational gaps in the workplace. It's kind of a subject for me that is a little near and dear based on my background and working with kids and all sorts of different age groups. And then even now in the Chamber, dealing with all sorts of different business styles. You see it every single day. It's so relevant. So the business world is changing, and daily and technology is continuing to evolve and impact our processes. Older generations are adjusting to the constant changes, while younger generations are having difficulty breaking barriers in the workplace. So working together well and recognizing what each individual brings to the table is key to building a strong team. So our panel of experts today will share knowledge from their varied experiences and perspectives, speaking of bridging the gap between generations, helping your team understand each other's different work styles, and leveraging the work ethic in each generation to enable each employee to their full potential in your workplace. I'm going to introduce everybody in a second here, but if you've got questions, please put them into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. My staff love it when I do this, by the way. They're literally filming videos of me doing this, and it's going to be on our social media at some point. We'll get to your questions in order as we get to the end of the discussion. This is going to be a little less scripted than we've done in the past, more conversational. So again, if you've got questions, add them in the middle of the event. If I can introduce them into the conversation, I'll do so. But we're looking to have some fun with this and hear from some really interesting people. So with us today, Emil Kamel from North Swing Golf Lounge. Not sure if anyone's had an opportunity to get over there, but again, really great facility and well positioned right now from a socially distanced standpoint. They've done a lot of really amazing things to make sure that you're able to go and enjoy that space and get a little bit of exercise and have a couple of pops at the same time. John Webb and Lynn Butler from the Creative Cafe. I'm not sure if you've got kids, you've probably been there at some point for a birthday party. There's probably a cup somewhere in your cupboard that was designed and built at the Creative Cafe. There may be a rabbit or something along those lines floating around the house, but stalwart and done an amazing job to pivot during the pandemic to offer up different ways for people to still use their space and facility and their services. And then we have Joanna Shaw with us as well from GMS Law, a very well-respected family lawyer within town, but has a lot of other aspects to her business and to the way that she goes about living her life that I think led a lot of credence to what we're going to talk about today. We're excited to have you guys all here. All first time, I think, presenters for webinars this year, which is great. So with that, we've decided that we're going to throw John and Lynn under the bus. They're going to lead us off, and they'll mic up here, and then we'll talk in a few moments.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you to yourself and the Chamber for doing this right off the bat. Thank you to Melissa from the Chamber for having the conversation with us, and two of the other panelists. And thank you, of course, to the people watching at home. We hope it's of value to you. We're going to do our best. So bridging the gap, I mean, we're looking here at the reality of today's workforce, seniors, youth. How do you make the two of them that seemingly are such polar opposites work together to maximize your profit per employee and reduce your cost overall? Why is this important? So many people aren't really sure, do they not just get along? Is it that easy? Well, let me give you a couple of stats. From the 1970s to the 1990s, the end of the 20th century, fastest growing group was youth. That's 15 to 24. As of 1990 forward into the new millennium, the number one fastest group growing is 55 plus. Their growth projections for 55 plus and 75 plus will far exceed and take anything that has come before it. So you are going to have to deal with the youth versus senior issue sooner or later, no matter what industry you are in. So we're hoping to help with that today. I think we can. Lynn, myself, both dealt with it with our employees, and we will do what we can. I have a face made for radio, so unfortunately you have to look at me, but Lynn, on the other hand, is beautiful and does a great job explaining our business. And yes, I am sucking up. It's always a good idea as a husband. Go ahead and tell them about the business.
Well, we employ people of all ages. I don't think age is a factor in regards to, who we have on our team here. Obviously, for some of the children's classes and birthday parties, we do like to give the younger generation a chance to, get onto the work experience frame network. And we've given lots of youth in Simcoe over the last 14 years opportunities to be their first job. And thankfully, we've been blessed with some great employees, and they've stayed with us for years and years, and then kind of gone off to college, university, and come back, during the times that they've been able to do some work hours. We have some older people that do some classes here. We've got, lots of single moms. I don't think that age is really a factor when it comes to a good employee. We definitely look for certain
attributes.
Yes. For hiring a younger person, for sure, we have found that, like people that have been in Girl Guides, things like that, that's definitely an attribute to becoming a long-term employee here. As far as general stuff, it's personality and lots of things, like within here anyways. Everything else we can kind of train them at. You can't really train somebody to have a good work ethic, unfortunately. It's either kind of there or not. I don't know what else you would like to add, really.
No, I think that's pretty well a good start. I think we should jump to the other two panels and give them a shot. I can see them smiling. I know they're itching to get started. Whoever's next, let's go for it.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll go ladies first. We'll go to Joanna. I hope you don't mind, Emil, and then we'll shift over to Emil. But I totally agree with you. There's there's always a place for every kind of generation in a business, especially if you're in the service side, because then you appeal and you have different perspectives and you can learn from your staff in a lot of cases. So anyways, with that, we'll move on to Joanna and go from there.
Thank you, everyone. And I echo John in thanking everyone at the Chamber and Melissa for engaging me in this conversation. I'm always really excited to talk about this kind of thing with people, because I do deal with, as I say to my staff all the time, I'm 102 and they are sort of, still kind of, almost not toddlers quite, maybe teenagers at times, but it's fun to work with them. They see me as the old lady some days, most days. So it's kind of nice to be able to talk about this and what it really means to be a part of their team more than anything else. And John, thank you so much for talking about the seniors aspect, because I think that is something that we definitely forget. And I certainly, I'm always talking about how important it is not to warehouse our seniors and to find ways to engage them and for our young people to learn from them, because they come with a lot of wisdom, right? And that wisdom is really critical to the way in which we actually move forward in the world today. So I wanted to actually just mention to mention to the group here today is, for me, when I'm actually operating as a business owner, I want to make sure that people in my business, they feel a sense of purpose and that they're inspired. So because I like to be inspired and I want to feel like I have purpose in the world. And I gather that if I'm feeling that way, then everybody else that's in my group want to feel that way. That sense of significance and empowerment, which is what we all want at the end of the day. So when we talk about generational gaps, I actually don't know that there is much of a gap, in the sense that we're all after the same thing. We're all coming into the world hoping and dreaming that we're going to leave it at some point, feeling like we've actually done everything we were supposed to do. And so that's kind of how I operate the business. I try to engage my team. And our team is anywhere from, the age gap is probably between 25 and 52. And actually someone mentioned 60, because I think there's a 60-year-old in our business. And so it's really important for us to ultimately be able to engage. And I actually asked my team to send me some messages today as to what is it that's important to them in terms of working here. And the things that were coming out for me were things like, we get to celebrate birthdays, we have movie nights, we care about everybody in the business, we call when it's a snowstorm. I feel like such a mom. If there's a snowstorm and they're heading home, I text them all and I said, okay, are you home safe? There are things that we do for our team that is really important. It helps them to feel safe. It helps them to feel like you trust them. It helps them to feel like they're part of a family. So one of the things that here at JMS, we feel that everybody is a part of our family. I call it my work family, but when I think about it, they're really my family, not just my work family. So I don't know if there's, I mean, I'm happy to answer some questions that Paul have for me, but just to kind of finish a little bit about some of the things that we do, is the other pieces around acknowledgement, right? Acknowledging them and making sure that they know that they're important to you and important to your business. This business could never run without my team. I could do it by myself, but it would not be as much fun, and I would not enjoy coming in the door as often as I do. Reminding them that there is a piece in their own life that's important to me. So their health, their mental health is really critical. And when I'm constantly reminding them about their mental health, I'm also modeling it for them, right? So I model taking time off to go home and meditate in the middle of the day. If I'm really frazzled, meditation is very important to me on a daily basis. So I remind them, if they come to me and they say, there's a lot of struggle and I'm feeling, anxious or whatever it is that they might be feeling on that day, I remind them, I reconnect them to what their own personal habits are that may potentially get them back on track. So whether it be, taking some time out to read a book or to take a walk, it was family day, and, a lot of times employers don't feel that like they can connect with their people over the holidays, the weekend. I sent a Valentine's message to my team saying, hope you have a great Valentine's Day, enjoy family day. So they like to know, I think everybody likes to know that you're thinking about them and that they're part of your life in whatever way that is. And I think that we forget that when we come into the workplace, we sort of feel like we have to compartmentalize our emotions and who we are. And we come into the business and then we become all business focused, and people don't need that, especially now. We're in a very different work environment now, and people really need to feel connected. And that was one of the things that one of my team members mentioned. I feel connected to everybody here, and I feel like I'm a part of something really important. So and inspiring projects, that is something else that we do here, is that we want to engage in projects that everyone is enjoying and that it makes them feel, again, that sense of significance and empowerment and importance and meaning, having meaning in their lives. So that's my addition.
There we go. Wonderful commentary. And again, I was jotting some notes. I'm going to come back to tie everything together a little bit as we discuss, because things that you're saying, I'm going to try to relate this back to sort of business strategy to a certain extent. Some of my lived experience while I take your comments in, just to give a different perspective. But yeah, that creating teams that are inspired is so important. The chamber team right now, I'm hoping, feels inspired about some of the things that we've been working on in some new directions. And that's stuff that you can get your head behind. It gets you thinking. It's stuff that goes on in the shower in the morning. What am I going to do today when I get to the office? And if you can do that, then and have that kind of an environment, it's better for everybody. So Emile, let's go on to you. I mean, you have a very diverse group, and I was reading some stuff from your bio there, so I'm excited to.
I think you muted yourself a little, Paul.
My screen's glitching on me there. Anyways, go ahead, Emile. We'll listen to you next. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for having me. I think the term expert's a little generous when it comes to talking about myself, but I feel like I can share my experience with North Swing. I started this business 3 years ago. our team has grown to be as many as 17 and 18 in our peak season. And if you've ever been to North Swing, you'll see a good chunk of our staff are younger, a lot of millennials, but we've actually now have a lot of Gen Z staff in there, and we have staff, as old as over 50. With that, I've learned that you're right. They are all similar. We have generational gaps, but we don't. And one of the things I get passionate about is talking to other business owners and hearing them complain about this generation and these younger kids coming up and how they're not good workers and they don't stay motivated. And that riles me up a little because maybe I'm lucky, but I have an incredible team of mostly young people who have made this business what it is and have been a huge part of our growth. And I think the biggest thing I've learned about dealing with that generation is it's a lot different. I've worked with my family before and I see what motivates people like my parents. This generation needs to understand. They need to understand why they're doing something, even if it's just a simple task. And that comes from sharing stuff that we as business owners think, why does the staff need to know that? Why do the employees have to know why they're doing this? They just need to do it. That may have worked before, but leading with authority is no longer the strategy that works. I think including your staff in even some decision making is huge. I like to let my team brainstorm ideas with us. Our team knows they can come at any time with a suggestion. And many things that we have here at North Swing are actually a result of my staff members, not myself. I get credit for so much of the cool things around here, but to be honest, my staff have come up with awesome ideas, and it comes with them knowing they can send me a message or walk into my office and say, how about this? And the response needs to be to consider it. Now, I've also turned down a lot of ideas, but that needs to come with an explanation. And I think taking the time to actually talk through why they have to do something and not do it. Why are we accepting this? How about this way? I find, especially, Gen Z, they're very challenging. They will argue everything, and we can get upset about that, or we can embrace it because, to be honest, they're brilliant. They've got lots of really good ideas. And sometimes as business owners, we get stuck in a routine of how do other people do it? What's been working in the past? And it makes it look like that's the only way to succeed. When in reality, this new generation has so much more creative ways and new ways of doing things that if we just consider it, you get so much more buy-in. And I'm always so inspired by our team. One of the things that really get me is when I see my own staff members who this is a part-time job for them. This is not necessarily their career, and perhaps it's a transitional job, but they're so passionate about the brand we've built because they feel like they've built that brand. When they talk about North Swing to other people, when they share it on social media, when they even walk around town wearing North Swing stuff, they feel like they made North Swing happen. And I'm okay with that. Trying to pull in and take ownership of your own business as if everything is yours, and you are simply an employee just doesn't work anymore. There's no more authoritarianism leading with that. You've got to make them part of your team. And we always use the term team members. They're not team members if they can't contribute. They're not team members if they don't see their ideas actually come to fruition. And it's okay to experiment with those ideas. It would be unfair if I don't also talk about one of my hardest working employees and give her a shout out, Tracy. She continues to inspire me in that the goal is not to just hire young at this point. And I agree. Tracy is from I think we have 3 generations at North Swing. So she would be from Generation X, and her work ethic has been nothing but an example for the rest of our team. Including yesterday, we were here preparing for this reopening that we're very excited about. And just to see someone with all these young people take a mentorship role and also understand that they are so vital to this business, but she never sees any task too big for her. And it's important when assigning tasks to understand that you don't throw certain tasks at younger people and others at the older people, because you are creating bubbles. And we're at a time where we're talking about social bubbles, and it's being encouraged by the government, but it's the last thing we want to encourage in the workplace in terms of actually creating, okay, these people do these tasks, these people do these tasks. One thing that's unique about North Swing is our staff essentially learn how to do all the tasks, even if they don't always do them. And so we have a gap in our workplace with ages, but they can work together. And the only thing I can share is if you are doubting this generation, I think North Swing is a great example of what millennials and Gen Z can bring to the table.
And I think to expand upon that, you've hit on something there, Emil, with the fact that when you look at the historical aspect of the ages, you know, historically speaking, the older folks, you know, went to war, their parents went to war, they were raised with that authoritarian, you do this, you do this, you do this mentality, and you go and you got it done, and that was it. The youth haven't. So where the older ones were told to do it, went and did it and thought inside that box, the youth never had that. So they automatically think outside that box. So what works for one will not work for the other. However, to merge the two and see the value in both is relatively easy and definitely beneficial when you actually work at it.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more, Emil. You hit on a couple of things. My background, and I mean, anybody that's watched these things, I talk about it, is I worked for McDonald's for 27 years. So, I mean, you want to talk about working with different age groups, there's the model for it. My largest staff at one point was 350 crew, all direct reports, and all different ages. And, you know, back in the 80s, you ruled with an iron fist. It was do as I say, because you didn't have time to be getting into that other stuff. If I was to manage that size of crew now, I would have to take a completely different approach because I wouldn't have very many staff left. These guys will quit and then move somewhere else if they don't feel that they're in that sweet spot as to what sort of supports them. I fall into that Gen X. My parents, you know, my dad was in the First, Second World War, and although he was never the authoritarian, you know, we definitely had a different relationship than I have with my kids in terms of the way that I mentor them. And I think mentorship is really what it comes down to. People don't want to be micromanaged anymore, and I don't care whether you're older or you're younger. They want to be able to have a say and to do what they need to do to be able to be creative. And I think understanding that as a manager or as a leader within your organization, if you know what your triggers are, and you know when somebody does something that doesn't exactly match your value proposition, that you're being triggered, and to back off because it's just a new way of looking at stuff. Everybody wants to work as hard. I don't care whether you're 14 or you're 55. They all want to contribute. They all want to feel like they're a part of something. And you have to recognize that when you're trying to lead them somewhere. So I've gone from this total micromanagement kind of, control freak, and I still am. It kills me every day, to being a lot less micromanaging because you get better results. If I was to say that I do things at the chamber, I'd be lying. I mean, I'm the pretty face, which is scary to start with, but you know, it's all Julie, it's all Melissa, it's all these guys basically adding their content in, and we have daily meetings about where we're going to go with something. And you know, most of the time, because it's a creative environment, we wind up with a good product. There's stress in there trying to figure out how you're going to make that happen, but the end result is a much better product, I think. So great talks back and forth. I'm going to go around one more time just so that you guys have an opportunity to kind of rebut or talk around that, and then we'll get into some questions. So we'll go back to John. We just heard from you. I'll go back to Joanna, and then we'll sort of circle back around again.
I really don't have anything to rebut, but Emil, a lot of things that you were talking about really resonated for me. The comments that you made around decision making, that is absolutely necessary, because I don't actually make a decision without checking in with my team first. And it doesn't mean that I will always do what it is that they want me to do, but I'm going to sit with them and I'm going to check in with them. I'm going to explain exactly why it is that maybe I didn't try what they asked me to try. And we'll talk a lot about, okay, maybe we'll try it at a different time, right? This is something maybe not in this moment, but we'll give it a shot another time. And so really having that conversation with them. One of the things that I do a lot as well is allow them to fail. Right? So you want to try an idea, give it a whirl, and then let's come back and revisit it, right? Because if you don't allow them to fail, they don't know what they need to tweak and what they need to, especially for the younger generation, right? They don't know, they don't get that sense of confidence in the business itself. And ownership is really important, right? They have to feel like they own your business alongside you. You lead from behind is one of the things that I always feel is necessary. Like I'm always in the background when I'm giving these talks, it seems like you, Emil, like you say, you know, you get a lot of credit for a lot of the work that they do. And so I try really hard to give them the credit. And I like to name one person in the team, but the reality is everybody on my team, they're exceptional. And I think that a lot of that comes from allowing them to work and to fail and to do things their way. And as long as it's not, you know, law society relevant, it's like, go ahead, let's give it a whirl, right? And I'll even ask them to check with the law society, see what they say about this, right? And you give them the steps and you let them go through the process. You know, I really feel that the mentorship idea, I see myself more as a mentor as opposed to the owner of JMS, right? I mean, that's what's written on paper, but everything else is when we are functioning and working together, that is basically how we function, is everyone's mentoring everyone. And we all have a duty in this particular office to model for each other, right? To model for each other the way that we want to see things. And so it's that whole giving them responsibility for that element of modeling and mentoring. And so I'm not the only mentor in this office. We're all doing it together, and they mentor me sometimes, right? And there's a sense of significance when they're feeling that. And Paul, just to kind of comment on what you said, one of the things that I do a lot whenever I get an idea that doesn't sit well with me, or an issue or something comes up that doesn't sit well with me, I step back and I do a lot of meditation and a lot of yoga to sort of see, okay, what am I missing, right? So rather than blame and complaining, is what am I missing in this particular context that I need to address about either me or about the situation, and how can I come to it from a place of respect and a place of kindness and love, right? So for me, and I know it's really bizarre to hear lawyers talk a lot about love and connection, and but that's the way in which I approach business, is from a very yogic perspective. And I think that most of us are wanting that. We're wanting people to actually care about our inner being and who we are inside. And I think if I can do that for myself, then I can do it for other people. And I find that as a business owner, if I'm not connected with myself, I can't help them to connect, and I can't have a business that feels connected. And I always know when I come into the office, if I'm disconnected, they will be disconnected. And so as a leader, it's really important for you to be deeply connected with who you are, and whatever it is that matters to you in this life. Otherwise, you're going to have a really hard time convincing and inspiring other people to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you do, you need to make sure that you're putting that that right face forward. In the old days, being in a restaurant, you had a freezer, and I used scream therapy, and whatever. You lock the door, nobody can hear you. You let it out, you come back on the floor, and everything is fine. No real place to meditate in that environment. But you're right. You need to separate yourself out from the issue, whatever way you do it, and get your head around, really what you're trying to accomplish. And is getting angry at somebody because they have a different viewpoint. Wish politicians would listen to that. Really the right answer to things. So, Emil, let's come back to you on that. Great points on mentorship. God, why do I keep unmuting myself here? What do you do to relieve stress when you get into those situations?
I think that one of the biggest things that is important to your team is it's okay for your team to see you vulnerable. It's okay for your team to understand that you're stressed about next week. You're stressed about what's to come. We always see leaders have to be strong in a way where you don't show no weakness. And I think telling people what you're nervous or stressed about within your team, being able to share that adds a lot of value. At the same time, you have to be the one who provides that stability to the team. When we are, COVID was a big thing for us. Every single day, staffs are asking me, are we doing the right thing or not? Are we following protocol or not? And I think everyone here would agree, we got no real clarity at most times as a business on how to run it. And I think leadership is providing that, being that grounding force to say, we're going to do what we believe is correct and we're going to stick to it. But it's so important to not only share decision-making with your staff, it's important to find that balance where they still know who's in charge. And that's something that is tricky. Myself as a younger business owner, is you want to have a team, but you also have to create that clear leadership role where you can still take control of your business. I did want to add to kind of what we talked about earlier in sharing decision making. It's also important to share your vision with your staff and have them buy into it. And that includes you're sharing what's to come down the pipeline. I feel like we like to hold these things really close to us. We don't want people to find out. Staff get excited about that because they're team members. They want to, be the first to know about what's to come, not hear it like the public. And it's very important to include them in every part of that process because they are the brand. I think when we look at branding and we look at a business and how you create a brand, which we have done from scratch, we look at a logo, we look at colors and everything, and we look at your furniture, but really your staff are your brand. When people come in, they're interacting with your staff. And so if they are a walking brand, they have to be part of developing it. And so it is important to hear them out. And the buy-in that we see from employees when they've had a chance to say their piece, whether you accept it or not, is so much higher. The buy-in you see from a staff member when they see the human side of you, that you do make mistakes and you acknowledge them in front of your staff. And I like your suggestion of trying stuff and being willing to fail. We have no problem as business owners because all we do is take risks every day to try an idea that we have, and then it fails. But we struggle sometimes to try one of our employees' ideas with the fear that it might fail, which is kind of silly. And so if you're willing to try your idea with no guarantee it's going to work, you have to be willing to try theirs and let them see it succeed or fail.
It's a very good point. In the juxtaposition that I said, sometimes you're fearful that their idea is going to succeed, and what that is going to say about you as a leader. And sometimes for some managers, trying to get your head around that concept is difficult. If they win and it's their idea, what does that say about me being a leader, not being able to sort of bring this to life? So, but very, very good points. I can hear a lot of me and you, to be honest with you, which is excellent. John, anything to contribute on that? Or yeah.
I think, that is so important that you really do have to understand that your brand is your frontline workers, and your frontline workers, without a doubt, are those that the people interact with all the day. And when you're management, that is very easy to forget when you're sitting in the office. And that's part of the problem sometimes, is you got to get on the floor.
Yeah.
It's hard to control up top when you don't know how it works down below.
We try and do monthly team get-togethers and, ask them for input, any changes that they think might benefit the business, any new, class ideas, or, when we're bringing in new products, we generally will run it by all the staff and say, what do you think? Do you think this would be popular? Because again, different generations are going to see different, like some stuff I will look at and I'm like, I would not want that. But then, other team members are like, yeah, that would be really popular, Lynn. Let's do that. And I'm like, okay, let's give it a try. And, sure enough, things are popular. So yeah, we try and involve our team members as much as possible in the decision makings within the studio operations.
That's phenomenal. I want to get to some questions. We have about a half an hour left, so I don't want to shortchange people that are throwing some stuff up in here. I do want to tie some of this stuff back, however, to a little bit of the sort of the business side of things. That you're seeing a lot of things happening right now as a result of the pandemic. A lot of legislation coming down with, how do you look after people that are sick and having to look after their families. What comes up time and time again is, that there's these things you can take advantage of if your staff, need some time off, or you're going to give them the time off. We need to legislate in mandatory days off and all those kinds of things. And what it illustrates is that there's a lot of businesses that don't do this right, and there's a lot of fear within those businesses. The ones that are going to be successful are ones that research this, understand that there are, gaps happening and that they need to be a bit more flexible. Otherwise, you're going to get legislative changes that are really going to hurt you in the pocketbook, things that you can avoid by just doing things right. Your absenteeism is going to improve. Your productivity will increase on the floor if you're, you don't have a staff that's disengaged. And keep an eye on what's going on there, because that legislative stuff is coming from somewhere and it leads to something. And if you can recognize what's generating those needs and address it in the way that you operate, you're going to be a lot happier, a lot more successful. A lot of it comes around with having standard policies and rules in place. A place that you come back to is to, yeah, I know this is all going on, but we're going to come back to what our standard is. This is how we do things. As a leader, it means that you're disciplining less and counseling and coaching more. And I think that's important in getting people realigned when they get off the track a little bit, because as much as we talk about this, you're always going to have that 1 or 2 staff members that don't buy in. And how do you deal with them when that happens? Because that 1 or 2 staff member can really create havoc in your facility if you can't get them, into your vision. And how do you sort of handle that? So I'm not going to get into the legal side of that. We've got lots of webinars on it, but let's get to a couple of questions in here. One question in here that I thought was interesting was, do you change your job postings to attract different generations to apply? And should I consider where I'm posting my ads for where people are looking? So I have my thoughts on this, but we'll start with Joanna, and we'll work our way around a little bit on this one. Or if anyone wants to take the question, throw your hand up. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, no, you do not change your posting for age because you're not looking for an age, you're looking for an individual. The moment it becomes about age, you're not going to get the person that you desire.
The job doesn't change.
Exactly.
You still need these requirements. You filter that out in the interview process. And is this person's culture going to fit what I've got going on? It doesn't matter how old they are. I mean, it's illegal to use that as a gauge in there. But in terms of adjusting where you're posting or how you're posting, that's a different story. I think as long as you're posting what the job actually is, where you post, if you're creative, if you're putting job postings up on TikTok regionally, I mean, and that's going to get you some traction, then go ahead and do it. I think, finding those right employees, they're going to be in a spot, right? And if that's what you're trying to staff with, then go find them, right? Any other suggestions on that?
Yeah, I wanted to add to what John said. We really had to get real about what are our values here, what they are, right? What our principles are, what our values are. And we actually crafted our ad looking for other lawyers and other people based on our values. And so we were basically suggesting, if you don't hold these values, don't bother applying. And so it had nothing to do with age. It had everything to do with how you think and how you feel and how you approach life. And if you don't approach it in this way, then we won't be the best employer for you, because we're going to have to deal with, as you say, Paul, some disciplinary issues, which we don't want to do. We want to function more from a place of coaching and mentorship. And I just wanted to add to something you had mentioned earlier, Paul, around how we as business owners sort of take things. And one of the things I had to learn really, really quickly was how not to take things personally and not get my ego involved, right? So I had to take my ego out of lots of conversations and realize that everybody's sort of coming to the table with their knowledge and looking at the world through their own lenses, right? So learning how not to take that personally and finding a way to either redirect or, and this takes a lot of work as a business owner, right? You've got to do a lot of research. You got to do a lot of thinking. And I mean, John, you came here today with a lot of research around, what happened historically. And as a business owner, you need to understand your audience. Just like when you're giving a talk, you need to understand your audience and the people that you're working with. And that's your job as a leader, is to really know how to approach everybody that you're dealing with and to help them feel the way that they need to feel in that space, which will then eliminate the whole disciplinary pieces, and because you can bring them back to your values and the same values that they apparently held when you hired them, right? So, yeah.
So another question here, kind of along the same lines a little bit. I'm a young business owner. Sometimes I find myself intimidated when hiring an employee that's older than me. Worry about them, teaching them new ways, or if they'll be open to learning from me. Are there things or questions in the interview process that I can ask that will help have this conversation before hiring them? Anyone?
I can take a stab at it. I don't know. I think that I would, for lack of a better word at the moment, not think about that. Like it's irrelevant, right? It's your business. you know what you're coming to the table with, you know your value and you know your worth, right? So anyone that's coming on board, if you're following a lot of the things that we're talking about here already, you know, leaving your ego out of it, taking your not taking things personally, engaging people in decision making, helping them to understand where you're going and why you're going in that direction. It doesn't really matter whether or not they're older or they're younger. The reality is that you really need to be confident in who you are and what you're about and what your business is about. And I think that that comes from a place of confidence. And for me, confidence comes from me really knowing who I am, right? So that all that meditation and yoga pays off in that moment, because then I have a deeper understanding of what it is that I'm trying to bring to the table. And here's the thing, I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, we all still have a lot to learn. And so that person that you're hiring, who may be much older than you, they have a lot to learn from you as well. So I wouldn't worry about that so much, more than I would worry about really, what is it that I'm trying to bring to the table? Who am I at the table at any given moment? And yeah.
Anyone else with a comment on that? Emil, your lips are moving. I can tell you want to talk.
Sure. So actually looking at that question, I think one of the most important things I look for when hiring someone is teachability. And that has nothing to do with their age. I've actually found some young people are very tough to teach. They're very tough to get them to learn from you. And some older people are easier. I think when speaking to the intimidation factor, it really comes down to how you perceive it. So if I am interviewing someone that I perceive has more experience than me and might actually have more skill set than me in this, and it's tricky that I have to lead them, that's actually a huge win. You found someone that can bring so much value to your business. Those are the people you want. But I do think when hiring, one of the most disqualifying traits is if you can assess that this person is not teachable. They will not learn. And this is regardless of age. That is something you have to look for in your process. It's hearing them talk about their previous experiences, their previous bosses. These are all clues into, does this person adapt, do they learn or not? Now, if they are older or younger, if this is an older person and they are teachable, you bring them on board, because the experience they can bring to the table. As a young business owner myself, you know, just in 3 years in business, looking back at myself when I first started, I've learned so much that if I had someone that is with me that can give me that experience times 5, times 10, it's huge. And so I would say, don't worry about being intimidated, but actually focus on, you've just found yourself a fantastic person who brings so much value to your company. If they can't be taught, if they can't learn, you don't want them on your team.
Yeah, I would totally agree. John, have you got or Lynn, a comment on that before we move to the next question?
I was going to say, actually, to echo something Emil said earlier, is you always have to have, even though it's a family, that leadership disconnect, that, you know, there is the boss and then the employees and, you know, your family, but the intimidation shouldn't be there because you are the boss. And yeah, definitely get that experience. You know, in many sense, the experience is what will separate them. One of the things I found really funny is people are like, well, when you hire older people, you find more health care days. So they're taking more time off for doctor's appointments, et cetera. And I said, as opposed to what, the youth that take mental health days? It's the same thing, you know, call it what you want, but it's the same thing. So hire for the experience, hire for the person that can be taught, the person that will add value to your team. It doesn't matter their age. It doesn't matter anything else. They're either going to fit with your corporate culture or they're not. And that's what Joanne was talking about. And that's all weeded out during the interview.
Yeah, I would, you know, and I would say that's a good point. I would argue that, you know, there are older people that should be at home and they aren't, because they're die, they're not going to work, and meanwhile they infect the entire whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's maybe an age to sort of look at it, but that was my mindset. I don't care if I'm on my deathbed, I'm still going in. So pivoting on that, you know, there's a question here with training. So do you find with training that you use the same training material, or do you change it up based on age? And it's a good point, because there's a cost involved with setting up a training program and having to adapt it. Does that teach people differently? I mean, is it going to change the messaging down the line, or do you have a consistent training process and you maybe just approach it differently when you get to somebody that's not learning in the same way that somebody else is? So yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, people learn 2 of 3 ways. Doesn't matter their age. That's something that every teacher seems to have been taught. That's what the teachers have told me anyway. So when we train for preferably 3 ways and hope they at least pick up 2. So I don't really find it's an issue, but again, depends on who they are. There's always the little quirks with individual people.
It just depends what we've hired somebody for, though. I mean,
Mhm.
primarily some of the younger team members here, if they're being hired, to do birthday parties or to do certain tasks, then yes, that's primarily their first role, and that's what we'll be teaching them and training them on. But they can grow very quickly and are given those opportunities to grow very quickly by bringing new ideas and I guess for a lot of stuff, it might depend on their availability, to be honest with you, in regards to, whether they're in school or, whether they've got children at home, that type of thing. But, everybody's got different skill sets. But they're given all opportunities to grow within the business.
Cream rises to the top. You'll see the ones, one of our current supervisors who oversees all the party hosts. She was a party host a few years ago, and she was, one of 5 or 6 that we had at the time. And she just, I want to learn more. How can I learn more? Proved that she could do the job, giving advice, mentoring, coaching the other ones. She naturally became the supervisor before we ever offered her the job.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. If you give them an opportunity, those that can will.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID had, unfortunately, of course, with the last year being so pivoting, we'll call it, it's kind of thrown a loop to how we run everything. Unfortunately, it hasn't given much growth for certain people just because there just hasn't been the availability there for us to be able to offer that. But let's hope that we're getting things back on track and that things will be different soon.
Yeah, I think to Mel's point, if you hire somebody that's coachable, trainable, it doesn't really matter what system you have in place, they're going to adapt. And I think COVID, if anything, has shown us how adaptable people are or aren't. There really is a line in the sand. I mean, I watch how my kid learns and I couldn't learn that way. But then again, maybe I could. I don't know. I think you got to take a chance on stuff.
Sorry, Paul, just to jump in, I think a very brief answer to that question is the material does not change, but the delivery will.
Right.
I.e., if I'm teaching a younger staff member how to use our point of sale system on an iPad, I'm most likely going to show them a couple of things and hand them the iPad and say, play around. And that's the material is you need them to learn the POS software. If I'm teaching an older staff member, I'm going to show them more things that, a 19-year-old might laugh at me if I try and show them. And so training is not just something you write down and you go step 1 to 10. You have to see how that person's responding. But I think most people would prefer to be doing the task as you coach them through it instead of you show them how it's done by watch me do it.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm teaching Paul how to use Zoom, I will let him know not to mute before he's done talking. If I try and tell a 20-year-old, I might not do that.
Keep your finger off the trigger. Yeah, and you would think after the month I would do and I would learn something. But there you go. Old dogs don't always learn new tricks. I've been recently introduced to the term mansplaining. So I've been using that as a basis of understanding what I don't know about anything, and relearning, how you approach things. And you're right. In certain age groups, you got to over-explain stuff, and others, you just let them do it. I'm a tactile learner. I like to read and whatever, but I want to get my hands on it to understand something. We have a new assistant coming in for the chamber, and I can visualize what it is, but until I get my hands on it, I can tell you where the problems are with it. So
sorry, just to throw one more point out there, Paul, something interesting I've actually learned the last couple of years is there's actually a lot of value in your staff teaching the new staff. And even though sometimes I feel like I know the material better and I can deliver it better, there's an intimidation factor when someone's learning directly from the boss or the owner and you're standing there over their shoulder, and they can be much more relaxed with another staff member who's no longer judging how they're doing, but more just trying to help them learn. And so I've learned reluctantly to sometimes back off a little bit of the training and just jump in every once in a while. Comfort is a huge factor when learning and retaining information. If they're too busy being tense and stressed about what they need to retain, they don't retain it. If they can just be in a more relaxing environment, it does work a lot better.
Yeah, from a McDonald's model, train the trainer, and then they have crew trainers that teach the crew all the basic skills, and as you move up through the ranks, and it's a good system. It still works to this day.
And if I could add as well, one of the things that I do a lot, because the lawyers have to sometimes do trials, and I don't actually go to trial and model for them. Sometimes it's trial by fire. You go in and you figure it out, right? You figure out all the things that you need to figure out, and then you come to me and we sit down and we hash it out and we talk about it. So it's allowing them as well to find the answers, rather than you always giving them the answers, which I think, Camila, you're talking about, you saying, you let your people play around with things. It's the same idea. You do the research, you go and gather the information, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about it. So there's a lot of that here, where we have to learn. We have to learn as we sort of just get thrown into the fire and figure it out. The key to that, though, is not to get impatient. Right. So, and not to get, as a leader, not to blame a lot, not to complain a lot. Right. It's all about, oh, that's interesting. You learned that, yeah, that was a mistake. Let's try to figure it out in another way. Help me to understand how you got there. Right. So there's a lot of those questions you have to be completely detached from the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Trying to find out, we've only got a couple of minutes left here, so I'm trying to find a couple of questions that are maybe a little different. One of them here is, find myself getting frustrated with the new generation challenging my way of doing things. They ask why a lot, and the answer is because I've learned from experience. How do I express that without sounding authoritative? Some days I feel more like a parent than a boss. My first comment is, my dad always told me that if you have to tell somebody that you're their boss, you got a problem, right? So I think that's the starting point, but I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. Who wants to start? Good, John.
Geez, we're all so chatty. I think your father's advice probably sums it all up right there. I mean, if the person doesn't understand the corporate culture coming into it, they're not going to. You can't make them get it. They either get it or they don't get it. And sometimes it may not, if it's one or two, it might be them, but if it's a lot of them, it might be you. And sometimes it's how you've approached it, and it's understanding that, okay, standing up there and yelling at them doesn't work. I gotta, show them what I want done, or come on down and talk about it in a different way, and then they're going to get it. And as opposed to telling them to go do it, let's go motivate them to do it, and that being the difference. Yeah, it depends if it's one person or a group of people. If it's one, it's them. If it's a group, it's you. Sorry, but
I would say in most cases, it's always you, in not being able to deliver the message correctly. For me personally, I use analogies. Anybody that knows me personally will know that I have an analogy for everything. But it came from a position of having to explain complicated concepts or whatever to kids in a very quick manner, kind of thing, to get them to understand where I was coming from. So I would try to find things that were relatable and drill it down to something that they could, the light bulb would go off, and you can literally see it. Just like a sales guy knows when he's getting close to a sale, when the head starts to go, that you've got somebody that's on board. And as soon as I saw that, I knew that I was, in the right place. And then once that light goes on, now all of a sudden the relationship changes a little bit. So I think you have to find your way with that to get down. Sometimes, in my opinion, it's you have a coffee with them, sit down and just say, listen, we're not seeing eye to eye on this. What's your perspective? You have to be open to have that conversation and see their viewpoint. Because you're right, if it is one person, then you got to deal with that one individual. If it's the entire group, yeah, I would again even ask them for feedback. What am I missing here? Like, nobody seems to be responding to what I'm saying. What am I doing wrong here? Let me see your point. Tough concept for a lot of people to get their head around when they're trying to be a leader, right? Anyways, interested, email?
So for me, I actually would stop and think, why am I being frustrated about the why? For every employee asking you why, there's probably a few more who are not and simply doing what you're saying, but they're not convinced and they're not doing it well. And now you're frustrated because they're not doing their job at a high quality. I like the employee that asks why, as long as they're willing to listen for the explanation. And so I will concede that I've had employees who simply ask why to question everything, and they're never going to have that conversation with you. But I take that why as an opportunity. They present you the opportunity of questioning how you do something. before you put your pride in the way and get frustrated, as in, I've had experience doing this, you just got hired, who are you to say why? Take it as an opportunity that what you're asking them to do is not self-explanatory. And so you have now a chance to explain this to them. They buy in, and they actually will do it so much better with so much passion, and will defend that decision. Now, that's an ideal scenario. There are scenarios where you get a chance to explain the why and they're still not convinced. And this is where you sometimes have to be the boss, not the parent, but simply say, you know, we've talked about it, we've explained it. Here's what you think, here's what I think. Ultimately, it's my decision. And so I'm happy we had the dialogue, but here's how we do it around here. But I do think we have to approach these whys as opportunity, and understanding that generation does no longer just does something because the person in charge said to do it. They have to be convinced of what they are doing, even if it's the small tasks of how we clean and how often we clean and why, all that stuff. It's okay to take the time to explain it. You're going to reap the benefits of that when your staff are now working with a little bit more purpose and meaning. And just know, like I said, that staff that's asking you why, they're talking to the other staff at some point when you're not around, and there's conversations happening. And if the answer to the why was too bad, just do it as is, you're going to have a whole bunch of employees talking together about how they're not convinced about what they're doing. And it's much better to address that why. If you find yourself frustrated, take a step back, ask yourself why. Is it my pride getting in the way? Because you have to have that why conversation a little calmer. If you don't, what's going to happen is you're no longer going to have employees asking why. You're just going to have employees either disgruntled or simply going, nope, I'm not convinced, I'm going to do it my way anyways. And you'll get back in there and you'll be confused as to why they're doing it that way. So take that opportunity and don't waste it.
And if I could just add as well, this is where you need to have really strong values and principles, right? Because if you're going to explain that why, if you can rely on your values and rely on the values of the business itself and why you're really here, sometimes that helps in the answer to that why and helps them to buy into it a lot more effectively.
That also helps you to retain the employees, and that's a key thing. It costs a lot to get a customer. It also costs a lot to get an employee
that you train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to that point, Emil, I think more importantly is that your management structure, your management team has to be in line with that. So if there's something that's being questioned, you know, you kind of equate it back to parenting. You know, I hate to pat myself on my back, but you know, we were successful as parents because we didn't let the kids play one against the other. The no was a no, and there was a consequence to whatever if they disobeyed or they didn't do something right. That consistency in the messaging, you know, created guidelines for them to know when they were getting off track. And it's the same thing for your staff. If your head manager says one thing and your assistant says something else and creates confusion, they may not tell you that there's that confusion. They're just talking around it in the background. And then you got a problem you didn't even realize you had that rears its head in the wrong time. So yeah, very, very wise advice on that matter. So we've got 2 minutes left, respecting everyone's time sitting at home. We did have a few more people jump in. I know there's questions on the board and that we didn't get to, but we did sort of talk about the flavor of those questions in our responses. So I don't think anyone's left hanging. But if there are any questions there that somebody didn't get an answer to, I would encourage them to reach the chamber, and we will pass those questions on to the appropriate panelists today. But having said that, I'm gonna just sort of let you guys go around the table. We will run a little long, but I'll give you an opportunity to sort of close quickly, and then I've got a little bit of propaganda to spin out to close it off the rest of the day. So again, starting with Joanna at the top.
I'm happy to let John go first because I think John was ready to go.
All right, good, John, there you go.
Again, just wanted to thank the chamber for putting this on. You guys have been great throughout COVID. You know, if you're not a chamber member, give it some thought because you guys have really stepped up, and I'm definitely impressed. I think we all should be. I want to thank the fellow panelists and thank those who have attended. It's, you know, this shows that you want to grow where you're at and how you're at, and understanding your growth is your business's growth is other people's growth, all being tied together is so important. And I hope everybody got some value from it. And, you know, if your question wasn't answered or you have other questions, please feel free to email me. Paul's got my email.
If anybody wants to reach out via email to carry on any of the extra questions, we'll be happy to email. It's lynn@creativecafe.ca or john@creativecafe.ca, and we'd be happy to follow up with any questions that weren't maybe answered today.
And if you want to have some creative fun, it's Creative Cafe.
That's awesome. Joanna or Emil, either one of you guys want to wrap up really quickly?
Okay, so I echo what John said. Essentially, I'm very thrilled to have been able to be here. So I want to thank the Chamber, and I agree with John. The Chamber has really stepped up at a very difficult time. And so if you're not a member, absolutely do become a member. This is a great opportunity to have someone else advocating for your small businesses as you need. And because sometimes it's really hard, as you know, when you're deeply embedded in your own business, it's really hard to find the time to do the advocacy work that's required. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much to Paul. And I just wanted to let people know, at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is actually a beautiful thing. And I don't know that I would choose anything other than being an entrepreneur. And the reality is, and as John said, it's about your own self-growth, right? The more you grow, the better your business will become. And I'm not just talking about, financially growing, I'm talking about emotionally growing and growing internally. And as you begin to ground yourself and get really strong in terms of knowing who you are, your business is going to improve dramatically. And never give up. I mean, that's the other thing, right? A lot of small businesses, we give up when things get hard, and knowing that there's a lot of people out there who are prepared to help and give direction, don't give up. Just reach out to people. So, and I'm always happy to assist as well. And Paul has my information as well. So
Absolutely.
there you go.
Thanks. Bill?
Thanks, Paul. I don't have much more to add. Thank you for having me. I will once again say I'm by no means an expert, as you guys put it, but just happy to share a personal experience in business. And I think the last piece of advice I would have is this next generation coming up is so fast paced that even how they learn and how they do things is changing so fast that if we get caught thinking we figured out how to deal with this generation, we're going to fail. And it's understanding that this is a growing and a learning process. Someone who is an expert or thinks they're an expert now is not going to be in a couple of years if they don't keep up, growing themselves, looking at themselves as a leader and how they need to evolve. And so my advice is don't get complacent in your leadership style. What worked a few years ago is not going to work in a few years. And this is the fastest changing generation we have seen in our lifetime, and we need to understand that.
That's great, great advice. And again, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate the the shout out and the invitation for non-members to join, because I think what's really become apparent is that the Chamber and its entire membership is a giant mentor group, and you have to approach it that way. Everybody's got a different lived experience, even if you're in a similar business. Realizing that law firms are businesses, they involve people. A lot of people don't look at those professional corporations as being a business, but they are. They're affected just as much as everybody else. But relying on everyone else as a mentor and having these kinds of sessions, I think, is really, really important. And again, I really do appreciate you guys coming. To that point, and again, my staff will be very proud of me, we have a YouTube channel that is very undersubscribed. So go to the YouTube channel. There's a ton of content. There's hours and hours worth of fantastic content in there. You can spend an entire Saturday, I'm not advising anybody to do that, just running through playlists. So click subscribe on our YouTube channel. It's not that you're going to get pounded with all sorts of notices. It just means that when you go to look for something, it's going to sit on that bar on the left, and then we're easier to find when you need to use this as a resource. So again, I appreciate you guys coming today, and I want to thank everybody for attending. And continuing to focus on the things that are important these days. I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but we've got a Barrie Takeout Challenge. This is our latest and greatest initiative. I'm not sure if North Wing's on that, but I know you guys do food, so you should be. Anyways, we're giving away two $100 prizes every week. Got a sponsor, so this nobody's out of pocket for this. The Chamber isn't out of pocket. The restaurant isn't out of pocket. We're offering this up as a like and share. So if you take out food from North Swing, or you go in there now that they're open and you enjoy food, take a picture of the food, the receipt, tag North Swing, Sadlin Motors, and the Chamber in it, then you get entered into a draw and you could win one of $200 prizes. So it's a great circular kind of promotion. We just need people to be aware of it so that we we get that up and going. Right now, if you were actually to put in your receipts, you have a really high chance of winning because we're just getting this thing rolling. February 19th, which is this Friday, we have a public town hall where we are going to be enjoying the company of our Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. So bylaw officers, regional MPPs, and we're basically discussing, navigating the COVID protocol. So if you've got questions for those people, it's the first time that we've actually had the health unit on a webinar. So really good opportunity, maybe get some clarity on where we're going. We also have the chamber chat on February 24th at noon. And again, we're also doing a webinar on February 25th on Bill 82, which is single-use plastics. So learning what the impact the bill could have on your business for those of you that have plastics involved in there. So again, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your contributions and the work that you do every day. Have a great week. Enjoy the snow day. Back to business. Let's get back to green if we can, and get back to reopening. Stay safe. As Rocco Rossi at the OCC says, stay positive and test negative. So there we go. All right. Thanks a lot and have a great day.